Arthur became a professional footballer with Rotherham Town in 1889, but before then, in 1886, he'd signed for the best team in Britain. I mean, without a doubt, that was Preston North End, and they were the first professional team in Britain, really, but he signed as an amateur. In 1885, the chairman of Preston had managed, he was instrumental in forcing through a change to the rules in football which allowed professionalism. Up until 1885 you weren't supposed to pay players. Many clubs in the north did, and to make it a kind of more honest game, really, Sudell, he was called Sudell, the Preston chairman, was fought for the legalisation of professionalism. But when the new rules were introduced in 1885 allowing professionalism, the southern amateurs, the elite from the public schools, they hedged the rule around with kind of clauses and caveats and stuff. So one of which was that you couldn't play in the FA Cup as a professional unless you'd been with your team for 2 years or more. So to get round that rule, Sudell, ironically, brought in amateurs because that didn't apply to them. So he signed Arthur as an amateur to get round the rule, the residency rule in the FA Cup. So Arthur played for the very best team in Britain as an amateur. The unusual thing about Arthur was that here we had the fastest man in the world, officially, because when he won the Amateur Athletics Association Championship at Stamford Bridge in 1886, he set a new championship record time of 10 seconds dead. That was later ratified as the first world record in the event. At the 1886 championships, they ratified the times and the distances and the heights, the records that were set. They ratified them as best for their event, and that list then became the first world record list, really. Ironically, Arthur played in goal. Now it might seem crazy to have the fastest man in the world playing in goal, but there was a kind of rationale to it, because football was a much rougher, tougher game than it is now, and the rules were different, and physical contact was a much bigger part of the game. For instance, players could be barged over, they could be hacked, goalies could be barged into the net with the ball. So you had to, for Arthur, the most precious commodity Arthur had were his legs, because that's how he became sprint champion. So football being a rough game, you had to choose. Now, was it the upper part of your body that you wanted to protect, or the lower part? And obviously Arthur decided, because he could play either out or in goal, that it would be better if he protected his legs, which meant it would be better if he played in goal. Which his rationale wasn't recognised by lots of people, because he was often criticised for being a bit of the word skylark was used, a bit of a kind of clown in goal. Because, for instance, he'd crouch in the corner of the goal and lean against the post, and then jump out just as a save had to be made. Or he'd hang onto the crossbar and catch the ball between his legs, and a lot of people thought that was showmanship, he's showing off, this crazy African, kind of playing at being a goalkeeper. But what it was, for instance, the crouching in the corner of the goal meant that he was a small target and he couldn't be knocked over. If he stood up in the middle of the goal, he could legitimately, with or without the ball, be knocked over, shouldered over, which would leave an empty net for the team to shoot into. So if he was crouching in the corner of the goal, leaning against the post, it's a small target, you couldn't be knocked over. So that was the reason for doing that. The reason for hanging onto the crossbar was, A, you pulled the crossbar down so the ball went over the top, and B, if you caught it between your legs and you were hanging onto the crossbar, you couldn't be knocked into the net. So there was a kind of there was a sense to his madness, you know, in that respect that often wasn't recognised.
He was known as the keeper with a prodigious punch. Can you tell us a bit about that and why that would have been an important skill in with the rules that were played under then?
Yes, Arthur was known as the keeper with the prodigious punch, and that's actually on his gravestone. When we in '97 Ferd raised the money to put a gravestone on the mound of earth that over which Arthur was under which Arthur was buried. And at that time, because of the different rules in football, if a goalkeeper caught the ball, he became an object, you know, that could be attacked, either knocked over or the ball knocked out of his hands. So most goalkeepers in the 1880s and 1890s, even in early 1900s, rather than catch a ball, they would punch it away because they want to get the ball away from them as quick as possible. And there's actually Mitchell and Kenyon footage of a Rotherham Swifts match in about 1902, where I think it's actually Rotherham Town versus Rotherham Swifts. It's on YouTube, and it's the camera's behind the goal, to the side of the goal, and all you see is the ball coming into shot. There's nobody around the goalkeeper. Now, goalkeepers today would have caught the ball and then, you know, thrown it or kicked it out. But this goalkeeper just went and punched it away with the kind of the flat part of his fist, like a volleyball punch, really. Now, that was quite common. That was just because it would be foolhardy to hold the ball, catch the ball and hold it, because you would have been attacked then by an opposition forward.